The stars shone brightly against the dark canvas of space as Captain Reed's small research vessel, the Curiosity, drifted quietly near the rings of Saturn. The ship's old metal hull and basic design made it look like nothing special, just another human attempt at space exploration. That was exactly how Reed wanted it to appear. He sipped his coffee while checking the ship's sensors, which were far more advanced than their simple exterior suggested. A flash of movement caught his attention. 3 large ships had just appeared from behind Saturn's largest moon, Titan. Their purple-tinted hulls gleamed with obvious technological sophistication. Reed didn't move to alert his crew of 5. There was no need for panic. He simply watched as the alien ships began what they thought was a stealthy approach toward his position. The aliens were breaking at least 6 different galactic laws by entering this system without permission, but Reed's job wasn't to enforce those laws. He was just here to observe and report. The largest alien ship, nearly 20 times the size of the Curiosity, moved into a position above Reed's vessel. A harsh voice crackled through his communication system, speaking in heavily accented galactic standard. "Primitive vessel, you have entered a resource collection zone. Leave immediately or face destruction." Reed smiled slightly and took another sip of his coffee. The aliens were trying to scare off what they thought was a simple human research ship so they could continue their illegal mining operation in Saturn's rings. They had no idea they were the ones in danger. "This is Captain Reed of the Earth vessel Curiosity," he responded calmly. "You are in Earth's solar system without authorization. I suggest you leave immediately." He kept his tone polite but firm, giving them a chance to make the right choice. Harsh laughter echoed through the communication channel. "Earth vessel, you seem confused. Your species barely has the ability to reach your own moon. Do not make threats you cannot back up. You have 1 minute to retreat." Reed sighed and pressed a small button on his console, sending a silent signal to Earth. He had given them their warning. What happened next wasn't his fault. The alien ships suddenly fired up their weapons, plasma cannons charging with a bright blue glow. They were probably expecting the humans to panic, to flee in terror from their superior technology. Instead, Reed calmly finished his coffee. The aliens fired their weapons. Multiple plasma bolts streaked through space toward the Curiosity. At the last possible moment, the bolts simply stopped, frozen in space as if they had hit an invisible wall. Reed's ship hadn't even moved. "What impossible?" The alien commander's voice trailed off as his sensors detected something new. The simple-looking human vessel's hull was changing. The dull metal surface rippled like water, revealing layers of technology far more advanced than anything the aliens possessed. "Last warning," Reed said quietly. "Leave our system now." The aliens responded by firing everything they had. Energy beams, plasma bolts, and kinetic rounds all shot toward the Curiosity. This time, Reed's ship didn't just block the attacks, it absorbed them, each impact making the hull glow slightly brighter. Reed pressed another button. A soft pulse of energy spread out from the Curiosity, washing over the alien vessels. Their weapons went dead. Their engines shut down. Every system except life support and basic communications simply stopped working. "Your ships will regain power once you cross the boundary of our solar system," Reed explained calmly. "Consider this a lesson. Appearances can be deceiving. Humans are not the primitive species you thought we were. We simply choose to appear that way." As the alien ships drifted helplessly in space, Reed opened a channel to Earth. "Control, we've had another incident. 3 ships, same story as usual. They're being sent home with the standard warning. Please update the Galactic Bulletin Board. Humans are off bounds. We don't damage them, but they really shouldn't try to damage us either." The aliens watched in stunned silence as their ships slowly began moving on their own, pulled by an invisible force toward the edge of the solar system. Their sensors, though limited, managed to detect hundreds of similar energy signatures suddenly appearing all around Earth's solar system, a defense network beyond anything they had imagined, hidden behind the same technology that had concealed the Curiosity's true nature. The news spread quickly through the crowded bars and shadowy meeting spots of the galaxy's busiest space stations. Dax, an old smuggler with scales that had long since faded from bright green to a dull olive, told his story to anyone who would listen. His hand shook slightly as he spoke, even though the events had happened 3 cycles ago. "We thought it would be an easy job," Dax said, his voice rough from too many years breathing recycled ship air. The crowd of aliens around him leaned in closer, their various eyes, sensors, and sensing organs all focused on the veteran spacer. Just a simple human cargo ship, way out near their Mars colony. Looked old, beaten up, like it was barely holding together. He took a long drink from his glass, the purple liquid inside glowing faintly. "There were 5 of us. Best ship's money could buy, newest weapons, top-grade shields. We had it all planned out. Surround them, disable their engines, take whatever they were carrying. Standard stuff." A young pilot with metallic skin interrupted. "But humans are primitive. Their ships barely work outside their own system." Dax laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's what we thought too. That's what everyone thinks. Let me tell you how wrong we were." He set his glass down carefully. "We surrounded the cargo ship, just like we planned. Sent them the usual threats. The human captain just responded with one sentence. 'Please don't make us break your ships.' The crowd muttered. Some laughed. Dax didn't. We fired our weapons, all of us, all at once. You know what happened? Nothing. Not a single shot reached their ship. Then things got strange. Our weapons disappeared, just vanished, like they had never been installed. The human captain came back on our comm system and apologized. Actually apologized for having to do that." More aliens had gathered around now, drawn by Dax's story. A bulky creature made of living crystal clicked its facets together in disbelief. "You're making this up, old-timer." "I wish I was," Dax replied quietly. "The human captain told us they'd been watching our group for weeks. Said they knew about our last 6 raids. Then they showed us the proof. Detailed scans, recordings, everything. They had been letting us operate because we had never killed anyone, just stolen cargo. But now that we had attacked them directly, they had to step in." He gestured to a server for another drink before continuing. "Then they gave us a choice. We could either head to the nearest galactic law enforcement station and turn ourselves in, or they would simply disable our ships permanently. Said they preferred not to harm anyone if they could avoid it." "What did you choose?" someone asked from the back of the crowd. "What do you think?" "We surrendered. Spent 2 cycles in a rehabilitation center. But here's the thing. When we got out, there was a message waiting. The humans had deposited enough credits in our accounts to start honest businesses. Said they believed in second chances." The crowd was silent now, processing this information. Dax leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. "But that's not even the strangest part. When we were in the rehab center, we met others. Lots of others. All with similar stories about encounters with humans. The doctors there told us that humans have been quietly watching over this part of the galaxy for centuries. They only step in when they have to, and they never kill if they can help it." A tall figure at the back of the crowd spoke up. "I heard a similar story from my cousin. Said the humans stopped a war between 2 systems by simply showing up and offering to mediate. When one side tried to attack anyway, their weapons just stopped working." More voices joined in, each with their own story. A trader who had seen a human ship rescue a stranded vessel while somehow being in 3 places at once. A miner who swore the humans had an invisible defense network that covered half the galaxy. A pilot who claimed human technology could bend space itself. Dax finished his second drink and stood up slowly. "Here's what I learned. The humans aren't primitive. They're not weak. They're just quiet about how powerful they really are. They don't want to scare anyone, don't want to rule or conquer. They just want peace, and they're strong enough to enforce it." He looked around the crowded bar one last time. So take my advice. Don't mess with humans. They won't hurt you, but they don't have to. They can just make it impossible for you to hurt anyone else. And somehow, that's even scarier than any weapon could be. Agent Mark walked through the gleaming halls of the Galactic Council's main research center, his footsteps echoing against the polished floor. As the head investigator for the Special Investigation Unit, he had seen many strange things. But this case was different. The Council had given him one task: find out the truth about humans. The small observation room he entered was filled with screens showing data from across the galaxy. Each screen told the same story. Humans were not what they appeared to be. Mark sat down at his desk and opened the latest report. "Computer, show me the defense scan of Earth's solar system," he said quietly. The main screen lit up with a three-dimensional map. At first glance, it looked empty. Then Mark entered his highest security codes, and the true picture appeared. The entire solar system was wrapped in layers of technology that the Council's best scientists couldn't even understand. Networks of satellites that seemed to bend space itself. Defense systems that could appear and disappear at will. And strangest of all, most of it wasn't even turned on. The humans only activated their defenses when absolutely necessary. A soft beep announced the arrival of his research partner, Dr. Wells. She wasn't human, though she looked close. Her silver skin and glowing eyes marked her as a member of one of the oldest species in the galaxy. "You need to see this," she said, placing a data crystal on his desk. "We found records of first contact between humans and the Star Empire. From 3,000 years ago. Mark blinked in surprise. "That's impossible. Humans only achieved spaceflight a few centuries ago." That's what they wanted everyone to think. Dr. Wells activated the crystal. Ancient images filled the air around them. They showed human ships, far more advanced than anything flying today, meeting with the Star Empire's fleet. But instead of war or conquest, the record showed something unexpected. "They were helping us," Dr. Wells explained, her eyes glowing brighter with excitement. "The Star Empire was young then, fighting off raiders and pirates. The humans stepped in, protected our colonies, taught us how to defend ourselves. Then they just disappeared, made us promise to keep their secret." Mark leaned back in his chair thinking, how many other species have they helped? We're still counting. At least 50 that we know of. The humans have been quietly protecting younger civilizations for thousands of years. They hide their true technology level, make themselves look weak, but they're always watching, always ready to help. A new alert flashed on Mark's screen. Another piece of the puzzle had just arrived. He opened the file and read quickly, his eyes widening. "Look at this. The humans have signed secret non-aggression pacts with 15 of the most powerful species in the galaxy, not because they were afraid of them, but to keep those species from being afraid of humans," Dr. Wells finished. "Clever, very clever." Mark stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. It all makes sense now. The disappearing ships, the mysterious defense networks, the way human technology never seems to quite match their level of advancement in other areas. They're not primitive. They're just really good at hiding how advanced they really are. "But why?" Dr. Wells asked. "With their power, they could rule the galaxy." "I think that's exactly why they hide it," Mark replied. "They don't want to rule. They don't want to scare anyone. They just want to help, to keep the peace. Think about it. When was the last time you heard of humans actually hurting anyone?" Dr. Wells checked her data pad. "Never. Not a single confirmed case of humans causing death or serious injury, even when attacked. They disable weapons, they block attacks, they protect others, but they never kill." Mark turned back to his desk and began writing his report to the Council. "We've been investigating this all wrong. We thought we were looking for a potential threat. Instead, we found something much more interesting. A species so advanced they choose to look weak, so powerful they choose to be peaceful." He paused in his writing, thinking about the implications. Maybe that's why they're off bounds. Not because they're dangerous, but because they're showing us a better way. Power doesn't have to corrupt. Strength doesn't have to mean violence. What do we tell the council? Dr. Wells asked. The truth, Mark said simply. Humans are off bounds because they choose to be. And we should all be very grateful for that choice. The Red Claw pirate fleet gathered at the edge of Mars' orbit, hidden behind the small moon Phobos. 12 ships, each bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. Their leader, Captain Stone, had heard all the stories about humans. He didn't believe them. No species could be that powerful and hide it for so long. The colony has minimal defenses, he told his crew over the fleet's command channel. All this talk about mysterious human powers is just stories to scare pirates away from rich targets. Today, we prove it. His second-in-command, a battle-scarred veteran named Bolt, spoke up. Captain, maybe we should reconsider. Remember what happened to Dax's crew. Lies and fairy tales, Stone growled. Look at their colony. Primitive dome structures, basic ships coming and going. If they were so advanced, why live like that? No one had an answer. The fleet moved out from behind Phobos, weapons charging. The Mars colony lay before them, looking peaceful and vulnerable in the red planet's dim light. 3,000 human colonists lived there, mining rare minerals from the Martian rocks. Stone opened a channel to the colony. Attention humans, surrender your resources, and we'll let you live. Resist, and we'll crack your domes open to the Martian atmosphere. The response came quickly, in a calm voice that somehow reminded Stone of a parent speaking to a misbehaving child. This is Mars Colony Control. We really wish you hadn't done this. Please power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted out of the solar system. Stone laughed and gave the order to fire. 12 ships launched their most powerful weapons at once. The explosion would be big enough to crack the largest dome wide open. Nothing happened. The weapon's fire simply vanished halfway to its target. Stone stared at his sensors in disbelief. Fire again. Everything we have. The fleet's weapons blazed again, and again, and again. Each time, the attack simply disappeared into nothing. The colony hadn't even raised any visible shields. Then Stone's crew began reporting something strange. Their weapon systems were disappearing. Not shutting down. Actually disappearing. The physical weapons themselves were simply gone, leaving empty spaces in their ships. What's happening? Stone demanded. No one had an answer. A new voice came over their communication system. This is Captain Reed of Earth Space Security. We've been monitoring your approach since you entered the solar system. We gave you every chance to turn back. Stone's sensors detected a small ship appearing from nowhere. It looked old and basic, but something about it made his scales crawl. Impossible. You can't just make our weapons disappear. Actually, we can, Reed replied calmly. We moved them to a safe storage facility. You can have them back when you learn to use them responsibly. Right now, though, we have a more immediate concern. Stone's crew reported more systems vanishing. Engines, shields, even their artificial gravity generators. The ships began to drift helplessly in space. Don't worry, Reed assured them. We're maintaining your life support and basic functions. As for your ships, well, we've simplified them a bit. You'll find they can now only move toward the nearest galactic police station. Once you arrive there, full function will be restored. Stone watched in helpless rage as his ships began to move on their own, guided by an invisible force. You can't do this. We have rights. Yes, you do, Reed agreed. You have the right to a fair trial. You have the right to rehabilitation. You have the right to a second chance, once you've learned from your mistakes. What you don't have is the right to threaten peaceful colonists. As the fleet was guided away from Mars, Stone saw something that made his blood run cold. The primitive colony was changing. The domes rippled and shifted, revealing layers of technology that put his best weapons to shame. The whole colony had been a facade, hiding something far more advanced. Next time you hear stories about humans, Reed said kindly, try listening instead of laughing. We don't like showing off our real technology. It tends to make people nervous. But we will always use it to protect others. The Red Claw fleet drifted away from Mars, its crew learning a lesson that was spreading across the galaxy. Humans might hide their strength, but that didn't make them weak. They were off bounds for a very good reason. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered for an emergency session. The room's curved walls sparkled with light from countless stars visible through the transparent ceiling. At the center of the hall, a simple wooden podium stood empty, waiting. The council leader, an ancient being made of pure energy contained within a crystalline form, called for silence. We are here today to discuss the human question. The leader's voice echoed through the chamber. Recent events have forced us to confront a truth many of us refuse to see. Agent Mark stood from his seat and walked to the podium. The past week's events with the pirate fleet had finally forced this meeting. He placed his data crystal into the reader and watched as images filled the air above the gathered representatives. What you're seeing is not a simulation, he began. These are actual recordings of human defensive capabilities. But more importantly, these images span not hundreds, but thousands of years. The hall erupted in whispers as the images showed human ships throughout history, always more advanced than they appeared, always helping rather than harming. Mark waited for quiet before continuing. We've discovered that Earth is not, as we believed, a young civilization. It is, in fact, one of the oldest surviving civilizations in our galaxy. He paused as shocked murmurs filled the room. But unlike other ancient species who chose to leave or hide away, humans chose to stay and protect younger civilizations. A representative from the Star Empire stood up. This is impossible. Our civilization is over 3,000 years old. We would have known. Actually, Mark smiled. You did know. We found your ancient records. Humans helped your people fight off pirates when your civilization was young. Then they asked you to keep their secret, and you did. Just as they've done with dozens of other species. He touched the crystal again, and new images appeared. They showed human ships stopping conflicts, protecting colonies, saving stranded vessels, but never destroying, never killing. For thousands of years, humans have been the silent guardians of peace in our galaxy. They hide their true capabilities because they learned long ago that showing too much power makes other species afraid. Fear leads to conflict. So instead, they pretend to be less advanced than they are. The council leader's crystal form glowed brighter. Why reveal this now? Because we found something else, Mark replied. He showed a new image, a massive map of dark energy spreading across the galaxy. This is a threat approaching our galaxy, something ancient and dangerous. The humans have been preparing for its arrival for centuries. They've been quietly helping other civilizations advance, building a network of allies and friends who can stand together when the time comes. The hall fell silent as the implications sank in. A representative from a warrior species stood up. If they're so powerful, why don't they fight this threat alone? A new voice answered. Captain Reed had entered the hall quietly during Mark's presentation. Because that's not who we are, he said, walking to the podium. We don't want to be the galaxy's warriors. We want to be its teachers, its helpers, its friends. He looked around the vast hall. Yes, we could probably face this threat alone. But that's not the point. The galaxy is stronger when we work together, when we all protect each other. That's why we've spent thousands of years helping younger civilizations grow, learn, and advance. Not to control them, but to help them reach their full potential. The council leader's glow pulsed thoughtfully. And that is why you are off bounds, not because you are dangerous, but because you choose not to be. Exactly, Reed smiled. We have the power to conquer, but we choose to protect. We have the technology to dominate, but we choose to help. We could be feared, but we would rather be trusted. As the council chamber filled with discussion, Mark watched the reactions. Some species were afraid, others relieved, many simply amazed. But all of them were beginning to understand what his investigation had revealed. Humans weren't off bounds because they were weak or because they were terrible. They were off bounds because they had learned the greatest power of all, the power to help others without needing to control them. Deep within the ancient archives of the Galactic Library, a team of historians worked through the night. Their discovery had shaken the very foundation of galactic society. Dr. Wells moved carefully through the stacks of data crystals, her silver skin reflecting the soft blue light of the archive's preservation field. "Look at this," she called to her colleagues. Another reference to the Guardians from 50,000 years ago. She held up a crystal that glowed with age. They're described exactly like humans. Advanced beings who helped protect younger species, then disappeared into legend. The discovery of humanity's true nature had split the galaxy into three groups. Some species wanted to form immediate alliances with Earth, hoping to learn from humanity's advanced technology. Others demanded isolation, afraid of living under the watch of such a powerful civilization. The third group, like Dr. Wells and her team, just wanted to understand. In a meeting chamber high above the archive, representatives from 20 major species argued about what to do next. The Star Empire's ambassador slammed his fist on the table. "We cannot simply ignore this. Humans have been watching us, judging us, for thousands of years." "Protecting us, you mean?" replied the ambassador from the Crystal Collective, her faceted body spinning slowly in thought. "How many times have they stopped wars, prevented disasters, saved colonies, and they never once asked for anything in return?" A hologram appeared in the center of the table. Captain Reed, attending remotely from his ship near Saturn. "If I may speak," he asked politely. When no one objected, he continued, "I understand your concerns. Finding out that humans have been quietly helping shape galactic society for thousands of years is unsettling." "Unsettling?" The Star Empire ambassador scoffed. "You've been lying to us all this time." "No," Reed corrected gently. "We've been careful about how much we reveal, but we've never lied. We showed exactly who we are through our actions. We help those in need. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We share knowledge when species are ready for it. What more do you need to know about us?" Down in the archives, Dr. Wells made another discovery. She rushed to the communication panel, her hands shaking with excitement. "Captain Reed, we found something you need to see." The meeting chamber's hologram split, showing both Reed and the new information from the archives. Ancient text scrolled across the display, accompanied by images that made several ambassadors gasp. "These records," Dr. Wells explained, "show that humans didn't develop their philosophy of peaceful protection on their own. They learned it from an even older species, one that helped guide humanity when it was young, just as humans now guide others." Reed smiled softly. "We wondered if you'd find those records. Yes, we were helped too, long ago. We learned that great power brings great responsibility, not to rule, but to serve, to protect, to guide. When our teachers left the galaxy, they asked us to continue their work." The chamber fell silent as this new information sank in. The Star Empire's ambassador spoke again, but his tone had changed. "So even humans were once a young species in need of guidance." "Of course," Reed nodded. "Every species starts somewhere. We just chose to pass on the kindness we were shown. That's why we hide our true capabilities, because we remember how intimidating it was to meet a far more advanced civilization. We remember how much it meant that they chose to help us rather than rule us." Back in the archives, Dr. Wells found one final record. A message, left by humanity's ancient teachers. "Power is not a right to command, but a duty to protect. Those who understand this truth are worthy of carrying it forward." The ambassadors began to understand. Humanity's choice to remain off bounds wasn't about secrecy or control. It was about letting each species develop in their own way, with just enough guidance to avoid destruction. It was about passing on a legacy of protection and peace that stretched back to the dawn of galactic civilization. As the meeting continued, more species began to accept this new reality. Humans weren't their rulers or their judges. They were their guardians, chosen by even greater guardians who came before. And perhaps someday, some of these younger species would take up that same role, continuing the cycle of protection and guidance that had helped civilizations flourish for millions of years. The observation deck of Earth's orbital station provided a perfect view of humanity's homeworld. Captain Reed stood there with Agent Mark, watching ships from 100 different species move peacefully through space. It had been 1 year since the truth about humans had become known to the galaxy. "Quite a change from how things used to be," Mark said, sipping from a cup of real Earth coffee, now one of the most sought-after drinks in the galaxy. "Remember when we had to pretend our ships were barely holding together?" Reed smiled and pointed to a group of alien ships practicing complex maneuvers near the moon. "Now look at them. Learning, growing, working together, just as our teachers hoped we would help others do." The ships were part of a new program where humans openly shared some of their knowledge with other species. Not everything. That would be too much, too fast. But enough to help them advance safely, just as the ancient guardians had done for humanity long ago. "Have you heard the newest name they're calling us?" Mark asked. "The Silent Guardians. I think I like it better than the species that's off bounds." A soft chime announced an incoming message. A hologram appeared showing Dr. Wells, her silver skin glowing with excitement. "Captain, Agent, you need to see this. We found another one." The view changed to show a distant solar system where a young species had just achieved spaceflight. Their first ships were crude but functional, much like humanity's had once been. And watching over them, invisible and unknown, was a human observation post. "They launched their first lunar mission today," Dr. Wells reported. "Should we make contact?" "Not yet," Reed replied gently. "Let them have this moment of triumph. Let them believe they're alone in the dark, achieving the impossible. There's time enough for them to learn the truth when they're ready." Mark nodded in agreement. "Just like the ancient guardians did with us. I found more records of that, by the way. Apparently, they watched over us for 300 years before making contact. And we've already watched this species for 200, Reed added. They're doing well, peaceful, curious, always looking up at the stars with hope instead of fear." The station's window automatically darkened as a bright flash lit up the space near Jupiter. The Red Claw pirates, after their rehabilitation and community service, had been given their ships back. Now they worked as part of Earth's search and rescue fleet, using their skills to help others instead of harming them. "It's strange," Mark said thoughtfully. "A year ago, everything had to be hidden. Now we're openly teaching other species, sharing our technology, helping them grow. Yet we're still off bounds." "Because that's not why we were off bounds in the first place," Reed explained. "We weren't off bounds because we were hiding. We were off bounds because we chose to help rather than hurt. Because we decided that great power means great responsibility. That hasn't changed." A group of young aliens walked past the observation deck, students in the new Galactic Peace Academy. They waved respectfully to Reed and Mark. Humans were still treated with a kind of awe throughout the galaxy, but it was no longer based on fear or mystery. Instead, it was built on gratitude and trust. "The ancient guardians would be proud," Dr. Wells said through the hologram. "You've not only carried on their work, you've improved it. They hid themselves completely. You found a middle way, hiding your power while still being present to help." Reed watched as more ships arrived from distant worlds, representatives for a new gathering of species, coming together not in fear or suspicion, but in hope. "That's the real reason humans are off bounds," he said quietly. "Not because we're powerful, but because we choose to use that power wisely. Not because we can defeat any enemy, but because we'd rather turn enemies into friends." The sun rose over Earth's horizon, its light spreading across the scene. Hundreds of ships, thousands of beings, all working together in peace. It had taken thousands of years to reach this point, but humanity's patient guidance had helped create something remarkable. "So what comes next?" Mark asked. Reed smiled as he watched a ship of the youngest species make its first faster-than-light jump, watched over by its invisible human guardians. "We keep doing what we've always done. We teach. We protect. We help others reach for the stars. And maybe someday they'll join us in guarding the next generation of young species." The galaxy was changing, growing, becoming something new. And humanity, no longer hidden but still off bounds, would continue its ancient mission, not to rule, but to protect, not to command, but to guide, not to be feared, but to be trusted, just as their teachers had done for them so long ago.